Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jolene Wuhiga. I'm the head of Trends and Tours at WindowsWear. And today we're going to be continuing our conversation that we started at the beginning of the month on COVID and the retail industry and what our sort of new variant of normal is looking like. As always, this is meant to be a conversation and a dialogue. So if there's some form of input that you have, if you are currently at a brand and you can speak to some of the things that we are talking about and some of the guidelines and initiatives, by all means, we'd love to have your input. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section, Zoom, Instagram Live, Facebook Live, or LinkedIn Live. We are currently streaming on all of those different social media platforms. So let's jump right in. So I said this for the first half of the COVID talk. And if you weren't here for the first half, I believe it was either at the end of the July or the beginning of August. You are welcome to find that on windowswear.com. So that is available on our website. But part two is a little bit more about, part one was sort of more conceptually about what was going on. And this is a little more about the sort of guidelines that are coming forth as we kind of, discover what this new normal is. And, it's interesting because currently domestically in the United States, we're facing this sort of crisis of back to school, right? The back to school moment. Uh, what's safe for people, for teachers, for workers, for students, for children. So it's sort of bringing up this entire conversation that we had sort of gotten underway at the beginning. It's kind of bringing it back into the forefront. So currently we're having, a lot of talks about what is safe, and it brings to mind, the retail spaces, right, which are also communal, and they're going to be heavily trafficked, just like a school would be. So it's an interesting conversation that we're currently having, at least here in the US, how we're going to be handling heavily trafficked places. And when I think of, schools and cities, I also think of places like Fifth Avenue and malls and, retail stores, right? Big box stores. So with the holiday season coming down the pike, a lot of these guidelines and rules and sort of new normal implementations are going to be put in. So we'll see how successful they are. Hopefully they are 100% successful, because we want everyone to stay healthy and safe. So even with numbers spiking here in the US and dwindling in other places around the world, there's this growing momentum for change in the fashion industry, which has been a long time coming. But we're seeing this recognition that businesses will sort of, right, that life, there's some a new normal that's been sprung from this COVID-19. And we're thinking this more along the lines of, without being alarmist, it's an opportunity and a catalyst to rethink the retail landscape and to really rethink, what's going on here. And that can be very exciting. So something that we're seeing in this new normal, the first thing is curbside pickup, right? And contactless delivery. Now, contactless delivery was something I had never heard of until mid-March, when COVID sort of struck quite aggressively here in New York City. But in 20, so far, the number of orders placed online and picked up at stores by customers increased over 208% compared with the previous year, compared to 2019. So this is a completely, wild pickup has been relatively common for the hospitality industry, right? I feel like the idea of curbside is quite ubiquitous to the restaurant industry. We don't generally tend to see it in the retail space. So this is something that is certainly new, curbside pickup as well as contactless delivery. I believe, gonna give this just a quick second. John, can you hear me? Just want to make sure that. Okay, great. I was getting some issues on my end, and I just wanted to make sure. I know Instagram is down, uh, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys could still hear me. Okay, great, perfect. Um, Apologies for that, just technical difficult. Great. Okay, so let's take a look at, so contactless delivery. Yes. I'm sure everyone at this point, well, I won't speak for everyone, but many New Yorkers at this point are very familiar with this concept. Major metropolitan cities throughout the world tend to be, very use, delivery as a means to survival, especially in the winter, right? We're used to, getting takeout or getting delivery for food, but it's quite different if you're not generally shopping on a website for a retailer to get something delivered, right? Like the experience is built in to have your packages delivered within a certain amount of time, i.e. Amazon Prime, etc. But it's interesting to see brands who have adopted a curbside idea, right? In this picture, for instance, we see Prada delivering, or rather Gucci delivering a product right to the consumer. So people still want to feel having an interaction with a brand. This is just a sort of safer way to do that for both the retail staff and the customer picking up the purchase. Let's move on to our murals and street fronts. So something that has been quite inspiring to see during this time is, there is a bit of a dark cloud over the retail industry in terms of the vast number of people who have been either furloughed or let go from positions for who have been there for long amounts of time, which is always tragic and heartbreaking. But what I think has the brands have sort of pivoted into this new role of hopefulness, and creating a sort of idea of welcoming back, right? Most of our, if not all of our retail stores worldwide were shut down during this time. It wasn't safe to leave your homes, so it wasn't safe to shop for both the staff and for both the customers. But we're sort of and coming back into a space where social distancing is being upheld in a safe way. We're starting to see that brands are feeling very inspired to create spaces that welcome people back in all different ways. Let's take a look at some really great examples. Over at Selfridges in London. Selfridges has some of the most famous windows in London, right? And London, they're paying homage to the NHS. The NHS is the National Health Service, right? Through these beautiful posters that were designed by the Selfridges team. So there's definitely a feeling of solidarity. I know that when this entire thing began, the first thing, people's sympathies went toward were the essential workers, right? The people working in hospitals and the people working at grocery stores. And, as empathetic human beings, we were over tipping our delivery guys, and we were, applauding every night at 7 p.m. the essential workers, because certainly a reverence for the people on the front lines, keeping everyone safe. So it's very smart for these brands to translate that, in a very human way and make it sort of accessible to everyone. Because at this point, something we're also noticing is, these billboards and storefronts are becoming these canvases for creativity, because so many people are spending time standing 6 feet apart, waiting on lines, right? Waiting on lines for their grocery or their pharmacy or, their essential needs, or if they want to go to Selfridges. If you're going to stand outside on the sidewalk, visual merchandising has always been a beautiful conversation starter visually for people to see, what's going on and what's exciting in the store. So in this space, it's very smart and it's very warm and comforting, and it's a really smart and fun thing to do. And, there's a high regard for all of those who have had to work through this pandemic. And so, Selfridges is setting a very good example of how we can say thank you on a corporate level, but still it on a personal level. You see also another little picture of the NHS and their different windows. And if you notice, they're really bright and poppy, and we'll get into their beautiful use of colors later on. But it's, it's a time of, again, welcoming back and making people feel very safe and that they are taken care of in the retail space. Coach, this is one of my favorites. Coach teamed up with an artist named Jason Nair to create this really beautiful, these beautiful, joyful murals. This is along their Fifth Avenue flagship Coach house. Coach has also committed themselves to more than $4 million in COVID relief efforts. And they have, during the course of the pandemic and still up until today, they've donated over $3.5 million worth of product to healthcare frontline responders. And they've raised $200,000 for Feeding America. They also are donating 100% of the net profits that they make from their Coach face masks, which are sold domestically here in the US. And corporate responsibility is a humanitarian effort, right? And I think Coach is one of the brands, American brands, that are always forefront of doing the right thing and being committed to putting their money where their mouth is. And corporate responsibility is really big right now. Consumers really want to understand value systems for brands, and they really want to support brands that they feel are supporting them. So good job with Coach. Then we jump to Ralph Lauren on the right. With a beautiful quote on their window. It says, "It is the spirit of togetherness that we will rise," with Ralph's signature under it. Ralph Lauren has also committed $10 million to COVID relief efforts. The funds that they have donated support multiple needs, which include financial grants for Ralph Lauren employees and a common thread fundraising initiatives. Club Monaco is also here with their sort of street art murals with their, Club Monaco is New York based. So, we heart New York, we love New York, we love Manhattan. It's quite, it's quite a sad state of affairs to see so many of the stores closed. But then I think, we transitioned in June, and during the Black Lives Matter movement, when the protests got, there was a lot of civil unrest in our larger the stores to, their inventory, started boarding them up, which can be very sad to see. But what's great is they then took the opportunity that, well, if we're going to board them up, let's turn these boards into canvases, right? So we saw these great celebrations, and Club Monaco is a great example of that. Over at Harvey Nichols, same idea, right? Back together at last. They do say that distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? So a little bit of a pun there, being good to see you, added social distance, of course. Again, reassuring guests and customers and consumers that it is safe to come back, that they are taking care of you, that you can go back to your favorite stores without worry for your health. The Louis Vuitton Rainbow Project. So this was a campaign that was held worldwide. The Rainbow Project was an initiative that dressed their store with these beautiful rainbow graphics. And I mean, ever since the 19th century, windows displays have always been a big part of Louis Vuitton's physical identity, right? They are very fantastical in the way that they build their windows and the way, the scale at which they work, particularly at the Fifth Avenue flagship, the Maison on the corner of 57th Street and Fifth Avenue in New York City. That's our giant rainbow that we can see right here. It's a great canvas again, and it really stopped people in their tracks and made them look. All of these rainbows were actually designed, like I said, the campaign was worldwide, so you could see these variations of these rainbows adorned in Beverly Hills, Chicago, New York, LA, Paris, and Rome, and Madrid, and Frankfurt, Toronto, Mexico, Canada. Anywhere you looked, you saw these beautiful rainbows submitted by children of employees of the Louis Vuitton brand, of locals, and they were then interpreted by the VM team and built out. And of course, the Louis Vuitton monogram was sort of incorporated into it. So it feels very childlike. It feels very young and spirited. And that's exactly what the world needs right now, right? Rainbows are like inherently happy and joyful as well. So it's always really fun to see a brand like Louis Vuitton, read the room and take a step and say, what is contribution to not only, be able to sell you beautiful garments and beautiful bags, but also to be able to inspire you and make you feel hopeful during a time when people really need it most. And then we have Macy's, the Macy's We Heart New York campaign, right? We Heart NYC. Everyone who comes to New York City, of course, always knows, on every street corner, you can find a vendor selling I Heart New York t-shirts, right? It's very specific to New York City. And I love that New York, that's kind of our unofficial, our unofficial logo, right? I Heart New York. And Macy's has really beautifully translated that. This is a work that was produced by Harlequin Design in collaboration with Macy's. And what I thought was very smart about this was the first time Macy's built windows in their flagship store in New York City since the Black Lives Matter protests started and everything was sort of boarded up. So it was a really beautiful way for them to set a new tone for the store's reopening. And the message, if you can't see it, it reads, "We are colleagues, we are customers, we are part of the community. We see you, we hear you. We're here for you." And this was in direct response to Black Lives Matter and the protests and the riots. They wanted to make sure that, they were a part of the conversation and that they honor that space. They're also featuring the artwork of Tracy Woods, who's a Brooklyn-based artist. She's African-American. And if you notice, there's all of the hands are very inclusive in their coloring, sort of signifying solidarity, not only with the COVID pandemic, but with the Black Lives Matter movement here in New York City. So this is very smart for Macy's and very hopeful. Across town over at Saks Fifth Avenue, we their 20 window stretch welcoming people back with this beautiful sort of purple hue, the color of royalty. It's warm, it's welcoming. There's a giant heart in the center, right? Saks Hearts NYC. Welcome back. We've missed you. Again, setting the tone of being hospitable and being warm and friendly, as well as being safe. A lot of people during this time are very trepidatious about going physically back into stores, and stores and brands are really sort of emphasizing, whether it's through their social media channels or their advertisements or their store windows, that we are back and it is safe. Then we have Primark and a couple other, the newsstand, right? A couple other instances of, rainbows, and thank you to our healthcare heroes and our healthcare workers, and standing in solidarity again with Black Lives Matter. It's interesting because, during this time, it could just be one pandemic, but, we hit a fever pitch in many other areas that were, troubling us, particularly I'm speaking about the United States. But it's fascinating to see how brands have risen to the occasion and responded in kind. So that brings us to happy colors, right? So we all are very aware that, colors elicit emotional responses from people. So during this time, where we're feeling very isolated and people are still social distancing, some people are still, actively every day, coming down with this virus. So people want to feel a sense of joy, a sense of levity, a sense of happiness. And yellow is the happiest color, right? It is fun, it's bright, it's cheery, it's optimistic, it's joyful. So it's the perfect color. Here we have a beautiful example of that, brought to you by Fendi. Fendi was actually one of our guests on our WindowsWear Live Thursday panel a couple of weeks ago, and they spoke about this particular project, their Peekaboo bar. They chose yellow because yellow is part of the Fendi brand DNA. They're known for their beautiful sort of bumblebee yellow. But in this instance, it felt really smart to take that brand DNA and lead with it, right? Give you this nice, bright, happy color. We also see a lot of beautiful yellow over at Louis Vuitton. Again, yellow is cheerful and joyous. So here we see it in a very playful way, right? We've got a set of drums, have this giant mallard duck in the background. So it has a great sense. It's still beautiful garments and bags and all kinds of, bespoke leather goods, with a sort of joyful twist. And then we see happy colors over at Harrod and Kate Spade. Again, there's something so joyful about rainbows. This is, you know, rainbows are often associated with the LGBTQIA movement, right? So when I think of rainbows, I always think of liberation and joy and inclusiveness. And, you know, same could be said with the Louis Vuitton Rainbow Project. We're seeing a lot of bright, happy colors over at Kate Spade and Harrods as well. So let's talk about some guidelines, right? So this is the sort of the we're starting to do, you know, brand meetings where they're sort of creating checklists. And for every brand, it's going to be different what the needs of your consumers are, what the needs of your guests are, how to keep your staff safe, right? That's at the forefront of all of this. Because if you can't operate safely, you can't operate at all, right? So we're starting to come out with these kind of guidelines and these parameters that are becoming universal no matter what brand you are. And with health and safety concerns, you know, it's the number one priority. Brands are starting to follow these sort of rigorous cleaning and disinfecting processes prior to opening stores. And there are a lot of stores that are still not completely open, but we're starting to see brands opening their doors, especially throughout Europe. Throughout Europe now, they've been, most stores have been open for at least a couple of weeks. You know, in the US here, we're slowly starting to reopen as fall approaches. But, you know, anywhere, you know, obviously wearing masks in a communal space inside, a brand checking and cleaning their HVAC systems, disinfecting dressing rooms and payment terminals before and after each consumer. One brand that I particularly think is doing a fantastic job of this is Lacoste. Many are, I should say. So we're citing just some examples, and they're setting a high bar in a very smart way. Their retail locations are equipped with protective masks, gloves, hand sanitizers, thermometers, soap, paper towels, all of that is on hand. Consumers are also able to scan QR codes within the retail store that will provide them with live updates on how many times a store was last professionally cleaned and sanitized, right? It'll also let them know what the store capacity is. It doesn't exceed its threshold. This is another way for consumers to feel safe. You know, they can physically walk in and see the masks and the hand sanitizers, but what other practices are going above and beyond? And I think that's a smart way that Lacoste is incorporating both their digital and in their regular retail landscape. And for people at Lacoste looking for alternatives to shopping at the physical stores, so if you're not quite ready to go into a Lacoste retail location or any retail location, Lacoste has introduced this new concept that they call Street and Collect, which allows, again, curbside pickup, which we just heard about, at the nearest Lacoste boutique, and orders placed directly on their website. You can also scan a QR code placed on the storefront's windows, which give you visibility into the retail store's stock on hand. So that, in my opinion, is really brilliant, because if you are physically there and you're like, oh, it looks like there's a lot of people, I don't know if I feel safe walking in, now you can just scan the Lacoste QR code and it will tell you what product you were looking for is available anyway. So you can save yourself a trip and save yourself any form of potential worry. This is setting up a level of transparency with a consumer will build trust. So Lacoste is on the right track to reassuring that their customers are going to have a safe experience. Next, we have PRADA. PRADA is restarting their production by COVID testing all of their employees, which again is very smart. I know a lot of stores are doing temperature checks for their employees, right? And making it once a week or once every 2 weeks to ensure the safety of their staff and of their guests. It's also worth noting PRADA and the PRADA group was one of the first big luxury houses to jump right into action. I mean, on March 18th, PRADA produced 80,000 medical overalls, 110,000 masks at their factory in Perugia in Italy, right? So it's unbelievable to see the way that big luxury houses pivoted. You know, in March, everything sort of screeched to a halt. And because of our relations with China, right, a lot of the supply chain instantly was broken. And so you had all of these people working at factories who are now unemployed, all this product that couldn't go out. So what did they do? They did the responsible thing. They said, all right, our community us right now. Consumers don't. It's not a time to shop. It's a time to protect the people who are protecting us. So they all sort of turned around and pivoted from building hand sanitizer at beauty factories to Prada's great example, where they built, close to 500,000 worth of PPE or personal protective equipment for medical workers around the world, right? It's pretty, and a pretty incredible feat that they took on. Personal appointments and inline entertainment. So we're starting to see, interestingly, these are things listed for, you could always have a personal appointment at Dior or Louis Vuitton, right? But we're starting to see this become more common because you can make an appointment. It's less about, it's a little more protective, right? As opposed to walking through the store where you could potentially be putting yourself at risk. So at Christian Dior, for example, you can walk in or you can make an appointment by calling or texting a sales associate directly. So they have a direct line and the sales associate will contact you and say, what do you want to for, and set up an appointment. Not only is it a personalized experience, but it's a safe experience, right? At Louis Vuitton, one sales assistant is dedicated to guiding your journey throughout the store, ensuring that you don't come into contact with any other customer. Your sales assistant also touches all of the product. You don't, so they can ensure that, hands are not going all over the product and that they don't have over sanitize, which can, maybe potentially distress the leather, but it's very smart and it gives you a one-on-one interaction where you really kind of feel like you're having this very luxurious experience, but also very safe experience. And at Gucci, they've created this inline entertainment, right? You can, if you are waiting in line, if you are social distancing and the line is a little long, you can download their app and that enables you to virtually browse the store while you're waiting in line. So before you even get there, you can see exactly where you want to go, exactly what you want to look like, which can save you time and energy. So new guidelines. So every store, like I said, every brand, is currently having this conversation. What is right for them? What is right for their customer? Do we want to open at 25%? Do we want to, these conversations are different for everyone across, but there are some through lines that tend to be, that are tending to stay, and here are a few of those. So over at Gallery Lafayette, there are signs to explain any of the new rules, which include our new normal of wearing a mask and respecting social distancing guidelines, i.e. maintaining 6 feet of distance with another person. On their beauty floors, there's no makeup artists doing applications. There are virtual applications to be done. The fitting rooms are disinfected after each client. They are using sanitizing wipes. One sales assistant, also, any clothing that is tried on but not purchased is also cleaned with a steamer and quarantined for up to 24 hours. So I know a couple of weeks ago, stores were opening but not allowing people to try clothing on, which would sort of deter customers from shopping. A lot of people, especially women, are very tactile shoppers. They want the full experience. If they're coming in the store, they want to try it on. They want to touch the garments as opposed to, buying something online. And I know that for most stores, there were no fitting room options at all, but now they've figured out a way to make it safe with quarantining the clothing for 24 hours and steaming it to any potential germs or virus or bacteria. Over at Saks and Nordstrom, clothing is being brought into the fitting rooms. That is brought into the fitting rooms will be quarantined as well for either 48 hours or 72 hours, respectively, before returning to the sales floor. The same goes for returns. So their return policy is the same, but now that clothing or garment or products will also be quarantined and cleaned. At Saks, foot coverings are used when trying on shoes. They will be thrown away after each person. Over at Nordstrom, they rely on visibility, so spacing out dressing rooms accordingly and posting forms indicating when the last time they were cleaned, which is after every person leaves. So again, transparency with people and offering by appointment shopping before and after closing, which gives people an opportunity, again, a one-on-one when the store is limited to just customers. Virtual appointments to shop via video conferencing are also potentially to be said to be coming down the pipeline. So while that's not necessarily the normal right now, it may be in the coming months. Over at Tiffany & Company, customers are escorted very similarly to what's happening at Louis Vuitton through the space by a paired salesperson. So they have their specific associate that is dedicated only to them, shows them product, facilitates the transactions, and escorts them out of the store. There are no unattended browsing, or there's no unattended browsing allowed at Tiffany & Company currently, and any Tiffany & Company jewelry that is tried on by customers and not purchased is immediately disinfected immediately afterwards. Here's a nice little list of, different sort of guidelines, again, that stores are taking and enacting to ensure that both their staff and people feel safe when they come into the spaces. And that can include curbside pickup or contactless delivery, right? So you can purchase an item, go to the parking lot, park somewhere, and an associate will bring right out to you. So it's a sort of hybrid of the e-commerce experience and the brick and mortar experience. Booking appointments to shop, similar to what we just talked about. Most stores are still not operating at full capacity, 25% occupancy. Masks are across the board required. If you don't have a mask, generally most stores, I believe, will have masks on hand. Branded hand sanitizer available when you walk in. When you leave at motions in which there are any form of points, you will have hand sanitizer stations. Contactless checkout, designated half occupancy by trying on and half occupancy for browsing. To try on clothing, you would need an appointment. So that is something that certain brands are taking on. And fitting rooms, right? Being cleaned after every single use. Customers can drop products they don't want to buy in a specific space where it will then be sanitized and quarantined. And we're seeing a lot of, if you've been to particularly any essential places like a grocery store, a pharmacy, a bank, you're starting to see a lot of plexiglass barriers, right? So we're seeing plexiglass barriers being put up to protect cash registers and cash wraps, right? Touching and sampling is being sort of put on the back burner for digital, especially particularly in beauty departments, places like Sephora and Ulta. They're utilizing 3D and or virtual trying on as opposed to sampling. Employees will be getting health screenings, right? Whether that's through temperature readings daily when they walk in for their shift, or COVID testing, once a week. Face coverings are provided for employees. The changing and rotating of hours of operation. So stores may be opening a little later, closing a little sooner to ensure that their staff has time to adequately sanitize the space and get it ready for the next shift or the next day. What else do we have? Social distancing markers on the floor. At this point, we're all very used to that, right? If you're standing in line at a grocery store, you're looking to the floor to see where you're supposed to be standing. So we're seeing a lot of vinyls, a lot of decals, things on the hiring of third-party professional cleaning services to come in and make sure that everything is really sanitized according to either the CDC or the WHO's standards, right? The World Health Organization or the CDC. And this idea of street and collect, right? A lot of brands are designing QR codes that can allow customers to scan and see what's available, to sort of expedite the process of whether they would go into the store physically or whether they would just shop on e-commerce on their online website. So those are just some of and here we can see, this is an example of some of those measures put in place. Again, we see the Coach promise to donate 100% of their proceeds from their masks to feedingamerica.org. And over at Saks Fifth Avenue, you can see the vinyl on the floor. Please maintain a social distance, at least 3 steps on the escalator. So accounting for different modes of transportation throughout one large space, right? Because we know what 6 feet looks like on the floor, but what about when you're, how does that work in an elevator? Work on an escalator, right? So addressing those for the public. And that does it for part 2 of COVID and COVID in the retail space. Again, part 1 is available on WindowsWear.com. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask at this time. So while we are waiting for some potential questions to trickle in, everything that we talked about today will be up on our website on windowswear.com. Feel free to check that out within the next 24 hours. That should be up and running. So you can find this information there. You can also find the information for our this COVID part 1. I believe they'll probably be together, as well as all of our Instagram lives. So if you have been watching every Tuesday, all of our Instagram lives go directly to our website, or not Instagram lives, sorry, our WindowsWear lives. They go directly to our website, so you can check out that information as well. Next Tuesday, we will be shifting a little bit, and we were going to start talking about the news. So we're going to go from one specific designated topic. We'll be doing reports about every month, so you can hear from us on Tuesdays. But next Tuesday and the Tuesday following, we're going to be talking about retail news, which is both exciting and different. And there's a lot going on in our industry, right? We're starting to see a lot of shift to digital. Again, a lot of shift within the universe of COVID-19. So do listen out next Tuesday. And this coming Thursday, we have a WindowsWear Live talk with an industry member. So please join us for that on Thursday at 3 p.m. All right, we've got some comments from Instagram. Thank you. This was great. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrea. Aaron Mazer Interior Design from Instagram says, thank you, very interesting. Yes, thank you so much. And again, for those who work in the industry, we're always curious to hear how your business practices and how you are pushing forward during this, this sort of new landscape that we're all discovering together. Thank you very much. From São Paulo, from Brazil, hello, welcome. They've been, we have members here for over 5 years. Thank you so much for joining us. Export Mannequins, it's great to hear from you. And I think that does it for us for today. So thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, always feel free to email us, visit windowswear.com for all of this information. And we will see you this Thursday for our WindowsWear Live talk with an industry member, and next Tuesday for WindowsWear Live for fashion news. All right. Have a fantastic afternoon, everyone. Please stay healthy and stay safe. Bye.